Welcome to another hard-hitting episode. Today we're diving into France's escalating crisis where rioting fires burn brighter than ever. Over 900 arrests, a nation in turmoil, and a government on the brink. Is this the new normal for France or a resounding wake-up call? Get ready as we explore the explosive story behind the headlines, the reason behind the riots. Cities across France find themselves amidst the fourth consecutive night of furious riots, as widespread public anger continues to escalate in response to the police shooting of a 17-year-old boy named Nahel, of North African descent. The untimely and tragic demise of Nahel ignited the existing tensions between law enforcement and the underprivileged youth in housing projects grappling with poverty, unemployment, and racial discrimination. Despite the impressive show of force by law enforcement, the turmoil only intensified, with acts of vandalism and arson extending from the heart of Paris to Marseille and Lyon, and even reaching French territories overseas. The strife-ridden area saw numerous buildings set ablaze, cars torched, and stores ruthlessly looted. Tragically, in French Guiana, an innocent 54-year-old fell victim to a stray bullet, an unfortunate casualty amidst the chaos. Gérald Darmanin, the nation's interior minister, emphasized the critical state of affairs during his appearance on TF1 television, ominously declaring that the coming hours will be decisive in France's battle against escalating violence. The French Interior Ministry later reported that over 1,300 arrests were made nationwide by early Saturday, as authorities attempt to rein in the escalating violence. The government remains optimistic, suggesting the severity of the violence is beginning to wane due to reinforced security measures. But the reality on the ground appears starkly different, with damages and unrest remaining widespread. The national soccer team, including renowned international star Kylian Mbappe, who is adored by many young individuals from these disadvantaged neighborhoods, appealed for calm. They released a heartfelt statement expressing solidarity with the grief and sorrow surrounding the loss of Nahel, the teenager who lost his life. They stressed, however, that violence offers no resolution, imploring for a shift towards peaceful and constructive expressions of dissent. The ensuing violence, the worst France has seen in recent years, piles additional pressure on President Emmanuel Macron. Funeral, arrests, and aftermath. On Saturday, Nahel's family and friends gathered for a funeral in his hometown, Nanterre. The Parisian suburb has been the epicenter of outrage since Nahel's death on Tuesday, which swiftly reverberated nationwide. In the early hours of Saturday, firefighters in Nanterre were tasked with extinguishing numerous fires, evidence of the previous night's upheaval. Nearby, in Colombes, protesters made makeshift barricades from overturned garbage bins. A concerning incident in Marseille saw looters break into a gun shop, absconding with weapons. Law enforcement in the port city arrested approximately 90 individuals as groups ignited car fires and smashed storefronts. Simultaneously, Lyon saw widespread vandalism to buildings and businesses, with a third of 30 arrests being for theft. Even an unauthorized protest, which drew over 1,000 participants earlier on Friday, descended into chaos, with numerous street fires reported. The Interior Ministry reported a staggering 1,300 individuals detained during Friday night and early Saturday, with an unsettling number of fires exceeding 2,500, while the arrests marked the highest count yet. Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin affirmed that the situation showed marginal signs of improvement, with the incidence of destruction and attacks on police stations dwindling compared to the previous night. Despite this, the human toll is undeniable. Hundreds of police officers and firefighters have been wounded during the turmoil, with 79 injuries reported overnight alone. The violence, however, is not confined to the cloak of night. The audacity of the unrest manifested in broad daylight, with incidents of looting and vandalism, including an Apple store in Strasbourg and a fast food joint in a Paris area mall. In the face of escalating crisis, the government response has been assertive, deploying a striking 45,000 officers overnight, some even recalled from their leave. While recognizing the legitimacy of the emotional turmoil felt by the public, Darmanin firmly stated that such emotions do not justify the rampant disorder and lawlessness. Along with this, public transportation services were suspended across the nation past 9 p.m, a measure aimed to mitigate the violence that these transport facilities have been subjected to. In Marseille, the public transport curfew was set even earlier at 7 p.m, while cities like Bordeaux, Lyon, Toulouse, Montpellier, Grenoble, and Annecy issued bans on public demonstrations. Iconic landmarks like Paris's Place de la Concorde was evacuated as protesters defied police restrictions on unauthorized gatherings at city centers. Iconic landmarks like Paris's Place de la Concorde were evacuated as protesters defied police restrictions on unauthorized gatherings at city center sites, including the Champs-Élysées and Tuileries Gardens. Another tragic incident occurred in La Petite Quevilly, a suburb of Rouen, where a young man fell from a supermarket roof during a looting spree and died. Reacting to the spiraling crisis, President Emmanuel Macron pleaded with parents to keep their teenagers at home and criticized social media's role in organizing and amplifying violence. Macron targeted platforms like Snapchat and TikTok, demanding they remove sensitive content. The president suggested a disturbing link between violent video games and the real-world chaos unfolding on the streets of France. The damage from the riots is catastrophic. Over 492 buildings were damaged, 2,000 vehicles incinerated, and nearly 4,000 fires reported nationwide. Teenage rioters, emboldened by the outrage, continue to ransack stores and torch buildings, cars, and buses. Amid the turmoil, Macron's plea for parental responsibility echoed across the nation, reminding citizens that it's not the French Republic's role to guide their children. This period of unrest shines a spotlight on a deeper societal issue: allegations of police brutality and systemic racism. Nahel's tragic death ignited outrage among France's disadvantaged and racially diverse urban communities, shedding light on their long-standing frustration. In response to the escalating unrest, Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne described the situation as intolerable and inexcusable. To regain control over the volatile situation, she announced the deployment of armored gendarmerie vehicles. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry rejected United Nations allegations of police racism as totally unfounded. Controversially, French police unions referred to the rioters as vermin and framed the situation as a war. Riots Escalate, the head of the UNSA Union Federation, criticized this statement and appealed for calm. Despite the large-scale deployment of police forces, violence remained widespread. The Interior Ministry reported attacks on 79 police stations and 119 public buildings, while major cities and parts of Paris were consumed by the unrest. The officer implicated in Nahel's fatal shooting now faces charges of voluntary homicide. His legal representative, Laurent Frank Linard, has put forth the officer's account of the event, explaining that the fatal shot was fired out of fear for safety rather than an intention to kill. Prosecutors have revealed Nahel's previous record of ignoring police stop orders and erratic driving behavior at the time of the incident. What does this mean for France? In the light of these turbulent events, Western governments, including the US and the UK, have issued stern warnings to their citizens in France. They've urged caution, advising individuals to steer clear of mass gatherings and areas with heavy police presence. With the unrest continuing unabated, France now finds itself walking a precarious path. Each step forward holds significant implications for the country's future societal harmony and the re-establishment of peace. Meanwhile, this wave of civil disorder cast a shadow over the upcoming Summer Olympic Games, due to be hosted by Paris and other French cities in a year's time. Organizers have expressed concern, stating that they are closely monitoring the situation as preparations for the global event continue. Meanwhile, Nahel's death has stoked the flames of long-standing social and racial tensions. The boy's mother, Mounia M, aired her grievance in a television interview, her grief taking the form of outrage towards the officer involved, but not towards the police in general. "He saw a little Arab-looking kid. He wanted to take his life," she said, shedding light on the undercurrent of racial prejudice that often goes unspoken in France. Nahel's demise is not an isolated incident, and echoes the racial justice protests that arose following the killing of George Floyd in the United States. In 2020, 13 individuals were fatally shot by French police for non-compliance with traffic stops. This year, another 3 people, including Nahel, lost their lives under similar circumstances. The recent riots, reminiscent of the 3 weeks of tumult in 2005 following the tragic deaths of teenagers Bouna Traoré and Zayed Benna, underscore a palpable demand for change and accountability. Yet, the resounding plea for peace and constructive dialogue from the national soccer team, many of whom share roots with the troubled neighborhoods, should not be overlooked. Their voices are a vital reminder that in these times of crisis, the need for mourning, dialogue, and reconstruction is of utmost importance. That's all for today. For more insightful content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you next time.